Welcome to Wellness Rebranded, the podcast where a dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist get together to explore health and wellness from 3 different healing perspectives. I'm Elizabeth, registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor.
I'm Maria, licensed mental health therapist.
And I'm Tara, personal trainer. We believe in finding ways to nourish a healthy relationship with our mind and body, eating for well-being, not weight, finding joy in moving our bodies, and embracing and understanding our emotions. We are here to help you redesign your relationship with food, fitness, and yourself.
How great would it be if you got science-based guidance from qualified professionals instead of trying out conflicting, overhyped, and unproven trends?
If that sounds as awesome to you as it does to us, join us every week as we dig into strategies to enrich and enhance our day-to-day life and health.
And let's start rebranding your wellness journey.
Hello, lovely listeners. Before we dive into today's episode, we have an exciting announcement. As a thank you for your continued support, we created a complimentary self-care planner download. We want to share with you quick and easy ideas to practice self-care, as well as thought-provoking journal prompts to inspire reflection and self-awareness. It also includes suggestions for how you can keep track of your wellness habits in a healthy and supportive way. Simply click on the link in the show notes to grab your copy, and let's prioritize our wellness. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Wellness Rebranded. Today, I'm here with Tara and Elizabeth, as usual, but we also have a very cool and important guest this episode, and I have been following her work for a while. I know her from the therapist world, and I really admire what she does, and she's one of those cool therapists I want to be like when I grow up. And this is Matton, and she's a psychotherapist and a coach. She is the founder and director, or better known as Chief Play Officer, of Playful Revolution. And we are going to talk about the importance of play and the effect this can have in our nervous system. TJ, thank you so much for being here, for accepting the invite.
I am really happy to get to be with you guys and to get to talk about what I love.
Yes. So
should I actually clap this time?
Yes, clap. We are excited.
So for all of our listeners, this is take 2 on the beginning part of our conversation because I forgot to press record. So
yeah, things that happen.
And ironically, we were talking about how we're actually all real humans who don't really necessarily have our shit together, even though we're in the wellness space.
And honestly, like, I think this is a great, like, in some ways, like, this is what play is. It's like the effort to create something and like learning to be flexible, you know, like Maria, you talked about like, let's just like redo it. And like, you can't redo it. Yeah. And like, this is part of what's really like suffering about our human experience. It's like, we want to like recreate exact experiences. And like, that's what play actually teaches us is we're like, fuck it. Let's try something new here. Right. And like trusting the process, trusting the mistakes, integrating what we're learning. Right. Like this is literally what the science of play teaches us is like how to be flexible and resilient and be like, well, that one didn't work. Let's try something else, like pressing record this time, you know, and like checking our dots and like, you know, protecting our process a little bit more. Like this is part of what play teaches us. So I feel like you guys are more embarrassed about that than I am. I'm good. Like.
So TJ, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what does it mean, play in the psychotherapy world and coaching world?
So I have been a therapist for 10 years, in my own private practice for 10 years and some years, like about 10 more years before that, or less than that, about 10 years in my own individual psychotherapy and 7 years in the field before that. So I got really interested in like using self-expressive work and in trauma work, because as I got into the trauma field 10 years ago, I really learned about this concept a lot of us are familiar with now, this concept of the trauma being stored in the body keeping the score, stress being a sort of physiological experience and not always this thing that we can untrap in our mind. And so I got some really great opportunities to learn how to use expressive modalities in the therapy room that would help people like begin to express their stories and interact and integrate with like calming resources in the room. But over time, I like really felt like I wanted more for my clients than like just tolerating the stresses of their everyday stress. And I wanted to see my clients return to this feeling of like abundance and vitality and aliveness that like as therapists, we rarely get to see. And so I started kind of diving into the neuroscience of play because I was really interested in it. Nobody was teaching about it. And even when I was asking about it in my trauma trainings, they're like, oh, we don't really talk about that. I'm like, why? It's like one of the 6 states of our nervous system. And I was like, why isn't anybody talking about this? Why isn't anybody talking about this? And so I just got really invested in like, how does play exist in the nervous system? What does it look like behaviorally? What does it look like as an experience? And how can I teach people to engage in this particular place in their nervous system? And so it's been like about 7 years since I've been like kind of in a deep dive in the research. But it's only been in the last year or two that I like have put full language to like, this is what I'm doing. As like, I am a play scientist and like alchemist in the world.
So in take 1, you actually explain to us what play is and 2 characteristics. I think that was actually super interesting and important.
Yeah.
Can you go over that again?
Yeah. So this came from Tara's question because she was talking about like what actually is play and like the confusion about like what it is. And I would say this is the hardest part I have entered into my work is because we think about play as a behavior, like playing soccer, doing a puzzle. And we talk about play as a behavioral thing, but it's actually a body experience. And so there's 2 things that we can kind of keep aware of to let us know we've entered a play state. And one is that our mind has stopped, and the other is that the clock has stopped. And so when we talk about the mind stopping, this is like kind of that inside track that is self-analyzing and is comparing, that this turns off during play. And that is because we are connected to the thing in front of us and we are feeling connected to our bodies during that time. And so as this kind of inside brain turns off, we also engage more deeply in the activity and the clock itself turns off. So we become unaware of time. This is where it's like they taught like the concept, like, time flies when you're having fun. And like, it is true. Like we enter a flow state when we're in a state of play that is defined by these 2 things. And so play is a body experience. And it's this feeling of both being activated by an activity as well as calmed by the connection that we have with that activity. Or it's being activated into something and calmed by somebody else's participation in the activity. So it is a both and at one time. It is both a feeling of activation and connection simultaneously. And this is what makes play so special as a nervous system like space, is that it is both the feeling of being like fully vibrant and alive and really contained and safe and like lost in the immersion of what we're doing. And luckily with people we're doing it with when we are playing with others.
So I'm just curious, like, I can't remember based on this definition the last time I played.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have
Well,
play experiences regularly?
No, and in my head I was trying to think of when do I have that? And what does it look like for me? And I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not sure. I think I'm a pretty buttoned up kind of person. Probably
Apparently
not
I am too. Well, maybe not. So TJ, for those people wondering, how could this look like?
Yeah, we need examples.
Right.
Yeah.
Examples?
Well, for like currently you guys are doing what I would call both directorial play and directorial play, storytelling play, and creator play. So currently when you guys are together, you guys are playing in communion with each other, right? You guys are eliciting story from your podcast guests. Like you're bringing your stories into contact with other people's stories. You have an idea of like where this podcast is going to go, like why you're creating it. So that's directorial play. And then you have this person behind the scenes, so I guess who's your editor, and they're also creating and editing story for you. So even in this moment, like this is play, right? And so play is like, if we can almost bring play as like a set of glasses, like can you drop into the feeling of like, you're getting to hear my story. And like, I love getting to share my story with you guys, and you guys love listening to story. And like, what is it like to feel like this like story vibe between us? Like, this is what play, like how we start to identify like play for us.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit confusing in a way of like, wait, we're working and we're playing. So maybe
yes, and that is how like our culture is meant to be, is that we are bringing the best of our biology, our passions, our purpose, like into our business and pursuits. Like that is like that's the gold.
Huh. So I have a question. So then if I'm like
Yeah.
out in my gardening, do
Yeah.
you consider that play?
Yep. Yeah. And so each person may garden a little differently, right? Like, so some people are like vegetable gardeners, which takes like very like kind of precise style of planning. And so that kind of person may bring more directorial play to it, right? Some people really love like these vibrant abundance of gardens, and that may be somebody who's more of a creator in their garden. Some people may be doing it from, like we have a lot in our area, like the Monarch Way stations, and like that may be more of like storytelling of like being connected to the story of the earth. So we can all do the same behavior, but bring our own lenses of play to it. And this is where play becomes a personal experience and not a behavior, and why play coaching is such a fun thing, because like I am looking for what actually about a behavior ignites you, so that we can find more opportunities for you to pursue that. And it allows us to kind of reorient towards our purpose and our passions and our pleasure at the center of those.
I have so many questions. This whole conversation is
Yeah.
fascinating to me, but I'm gonna ask two.
Okay.
Sorry for being greedy, girls. My first question is, and I'll ask them both and then you can answer it. Is it possible to be gardening and not playing? And then my second question is, somebody comes in to see you, and how do you know if they need more play, and what do you recommend? Like, where do you start?
Wait. I think I need to ask a question first.
Okay.
Okay, so who's
And
gonna take notes?
And I was just gonna say, and this is me writing down my questions because I know we'll forget.
Write down your questions.
I'm writing them down too, Elizabeth.
Okay, good.
Sorry. I just feel like I've heard you mention different types of play, like directorial and creating and whatever. Is there like a given, like, oh, here's the 5 ways we play?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would be helpful in answering Elizabeth's second question.
Yeah. So there's 8 play personalities. Let's see if I can do them all on memory right now, because I always know them, but I always forget one. So there's the director, there is the explorer, there is the joker, there is the storyteller, there is the competitor, there is the kinetic, there is the creator, and the collector. So we have
You're
8.
watching a group of children play. Are you like, is everyone taking on a different role, or no, it's not like that?
Not always. Like, so if you have a bunch of kids on the jungle gym, like you probably have a group of kinetic players, right? Like if you have a bunch of kids at a Lego convention, like you're going to have, like, these are people who like collectively play together. This is how we find our best play buddies. Like, the people, like, even as adults, like we can feel when we drop into conversation with somebody, you're like, you're a kindred spirit, like you can kind of feel that. And most likely that's because you guys have similar play personalities and like energy, like ways of like aligning in the world. So like there's so many different sciences of play. Like there's also aspects of people who like where there's collective play versus solo play. There's ritual play. There's a ton of different frameworks, but a lot of what I use to kind of really help people orient to it is by helping them identify their primary play personalities, and starting by igniting the easiest of their play biology, and then shifting over time into the harder play personalities. And so to give a more specific example of like how this works, I'll just kind of talk about my own story. I am like a kinetic player. I grew up as an athlete, but I was never like really super competitive. Like I really just enjoyed the pushing and challenges of movement in my body. In the times where I've really struggled in my mental health, had like one of the first things to go is I stopped moving my body. I would say like my secondary or maybe even my primary other form is the explorer. Like I'm just naturally a really curious person. I'm always down to like try new things, try new foods, like talk to a new person. And so like the other thing I know when I'm struggling in my mental health is that my curiosity is deprived, right? So like I know the first 2 signs that I am play deprived is that my body is too still, and for its nature, for my nature, and
Mm-hmm.
that my curiosity is understimulated within my nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I started kind of using play as like the anchor, it was just like things sort of exploded. I struggle the most with directorial play and joker play. So directorial play is like, how do you plan and execute something to your vision? And that is like the ADHD person's nightmare. So but over time, like I just bought my first puzzle last night, literally ever, because puzzles intimidate me so much. Right. But I've also, I did this like 6-month business coaching program, and it was so hard. But one day I decided to map it out like a tree, because I was a big tree climber. So I actually spent like half a day like drawing a tree and like mapping out each branch was a different aspect of the lesson. And all of a sudden I could feel my body climbing the curriculum. And I was like, oh, I can fucking do this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I applied my kinetic lens to this thing that I was so overwhelmed by, this like educational format, that I was like, there's no way I can do this. But it wasn't until I applied like the best that my body knows of myself to this thing I was really struggling in, that I was like, oh, I can definitely do this. Right.
Fascinating.
And
Love that.
And so it's really about like kind of how do we and then how do we get our best of our biology into the areas that are the most challenging. So like I also took an improv class this fall for the first time, because I was like, how do people laugh? And I've been like really studying laughter this year, because it's not my most natural like body space. So I've like pursued people. Like my daughter has been fascinated by it. She's like, Mom, you're making really weird friends this year. She's like, and I was like, I know. And like, she's like, notice I'm making friends who are like, are stupid in their world and like frivolous in their energy. And she's like, she's like actually noticed it, which has been interesting. But one of the things I do best in my improv class is when the scene needs to go like extra body play, I'm like first to fall on the ground, and like first to enter a scene, because like I trust my body's mobility more than I do my laughter, but it's my body mobility that then gets me to laughter.
Okay, is anyone else thinking she's like the coolest person right now who just signed up for an improv class just because she wanted to play differently? I love that.
So I'm thinking how important could be for each one of us to really understand what type of play, because I hear you talking, I'm like, wow, I feel the same with the director, like it's really hard for me to picture those, like I have a business meeting, I'm like, I can't, my brain doesn't go those places. But you tell me the Joker and I'm like, oh, I can do that. So, easy peasy for me.
And is there some sort of assessment we can take?
Yes. Right. Yes, there is. So, I mean, this is like, I truly do not want to gatekeep people's play. I want everybody to know their play strengths and like to take that out into the world. Like, I just truly believe, like you said, Maria, like everybody does better in this world when they are in touch with the best of their biology in this way. Right. Like, it is truly such a gift to like watch people like be like, oh my God, all of a sudden I'm like making sense to myself. Right. Like my struggles make sense to me. Like the things I crave and long for in my life make sense to me. Like where I'm holding myself hostage from that joy is making sense to me.
Wow, this is
and it is so rich and amazing to watch like people's chests like fly open when like they are reintroduced to this part of themselves. Because Elizabeth, you asked a little bit ago, like how does somebody know that we need play? And everybody needs play. We are the only mammal on earth that does not play across their lifespan. Right. Like, and that is because that's because we are culturally trained out of it. And because we as mammals are like, as our mammal bodies are much, we have social pressure that does not exist in the animal kingdom in the same way. So both our our social connection is like unique to our mammal biology. Both is what can be the most liberating. And when that is not going well, it is the thing that takes play away from us immediately.
So
because we need belonging. Right. So if we don't so we have a culture that trains us out of play more than any other mammal in the world.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to hear and think about it that way. Can
Yeah.
you explain what's happening? Yeah, like what's happening in your nervous system when you're playing and what's happening, like if someone is not ever,
Engaging in
yeah,
this experience.
if play is something
Yeah.
they're missing out on largely in their life, like what does that look like in your nervous system?
Yeah. So from a nervous system perspective, I work with the nervous system like a ladder, and this comes from the polyvagal lens. And so if we think about the ladder, at the top of the ladder is where we are socially connected as creatures. And then in the middle of the ladder is what we call fight and flight. It is the most activated part of our nervous system. And at the very bottom of our ladder, we have what is known as collapse or dorsal. And this is where the body just sort of like is completely disengaged. So
Deplete.
those are the three major states of the nervous system. But then there's two blended states. There's actually three, but I'm not going to go into, like, there's three blended states. The in between the social connection part at the top and the fight and flight, in between those two is play. And in between fight and flight and the collapse is freeze. And so freeze, we kind of know as this like feeling of being confused. I don't know what to do. Our system is like, how do I get out of this? But I don't know how to get out of this. And it's before our body takes physical action to move away from a threat or to engage in a threat, right? So play is this place where we're actually using the energy of the fight and flight behavior, but in the safety of social connection. So if we think about this, like tackle football, right? Like under no circumstance is running after another person and tackling them behaviorally an okay thing to do outside of the social engagement and the collaboration of it being a playful behavior. So it is the social connection that allows these fight and flight behaviors to be safely re-engaged, like within the system, like within a one person's biology system or multiple biology systems. And so when we're thinking about nervous system, like in nervous system recovery, right? In order to get from a deactivated place in our nervous system, a stuck place in our nervous system, or an overwhelmed and activated, like people who are highly anxious or highly in like reactive states of anger, in order for us to get through any of that, we need to pass through play, where it's almost like we learn to rough and tumble play within ourselves and with other people. Like, how do I re-engage this energy in pro-social connected ways? But so this is really about like, learning to make mistakes in our behavior, like learn the forgiveness, like learn like that sometimes we tackle people too hard in the world and we're like, oh man, I'm really sorry about that. But like that's social play. Like, and so how do we begin to sort of re-engage people in like this sort of more expansive way of living, where we're willing to take risks, we're willing to use our courage, where there's purpose to the risk taking. And it's not like jumping off a cliff risk taking. It is like, how do I build this risk tolerance to take important risks in my life? And so like my play coaching starts with like, let's find like your play portals and find stupid, frivolous ways to re-engage like your natural gifts. And then let's figure out like, what do you actually care about? Because like my clients don't actually care about like skipping cracks on the street, right? Like on a walk one day, right? Mm-hmm. My clients don't care. Like that is fun and frivolous is really important, but that's not what they actually care about. What they actually care about is like, how do I skip over cracks in life that don't actually matter to me?
Yeah.
Like, or how do I step over this crack that feels like a chasm to me? Right? Like, but we learn to do that because like we learn what it's like to just skip over cracks on the street. And so it's a progression into more meaningful play from this place of like, let's get stupid.
Hearing you give that analogy makes me think about how even kids in our culture are getting less and less opportunities to play, right? And even in schools, there's more like structured time. And I never really, it's like you kind of know it, but the way you described it just now was so beautiful of like that play of like, I mean, at least I think of a kid, like don't step on a crack break your mother's back kind of thing. It like,
Yeah.
let's do that, right? Not adults, but like, it's so interesting to hear how that's actually helping them set them up later in life, get around the real cracks.
I mean, just even sitting here, like if, when you think just for a moment, like about like, what did play look like for you as a kid? Like just thinking back to like one small moment of play as a kid. Like for me, I always go back to climbing trees. And like, I'm curious, like, what do you guys go to?
Oh my gosh, I played with so many dolls.
So, that's interesting, TJ, because I was thinking about that recently. Since I was little, I always had a microphone in my hand. I always pretended that I was like Madonna giving a concert.
Not at all surprising.
I know.
Yeah.
So, and still nowadays, when I'm showering very frequently, I imagine that I'm like in the biggest stage in the world, and I'm like Maria Winters, the celebrity.
Yeah.
I'm like singing.
So Maria, do you feel how you're lighting up even talking about that? Like you popped into the screen, you're like, let me tell you, girl. Like, let me tell you about my shower concerts. Right? Like this is like what we want people to have access to, and Elizabeth, like I just saw you like slide into delight, like just thinking about like the stories you would create for your dolls, like just like the way your shoulders and chest softened. And like, Tara, what about you?
It's funny. My mom says that I always hated toys and that she was my toy. So
Yeah.
I was like hung out with my mom a lot. But my brother on the flip side was more like you, TJ, and he wanted to climb trees. And, like we had a huge backyard. So we were always looking for like turtles and snakes and frogs. And we had a house that was supposed to have a slide and didn't. So we just jumped out the hole. Like a very physical.
And so
so
you were also somebody who's really oriented towards having a play buddy. Like Elizabeth and Maria just expressed like that they're probably more independent, like happy and solo independent play. But I'm thinking about like other places where I know you, and like you're the leader of a team. You've created this village. Like you are somebody who orients towards play buddies as a way to bring your playful spirit alive. Right. And like, that's an important.
Interesting, because if you asked me, I'd be like, no, I like being alone.
Well, I think that changes when you're postpartum, right? Like when you're postpartum, I do think that like the need for solo play like really does increase, but it doesn't mean that like in the greater season of your life, like that you are really inspired by having good playmates in your world.
Why are you looking at me?
I feel like you know me better than TJ and Maria do, so I'm like, wow, Elizabeth, what's this?
Something about myself.
Yeah, and so I think as we like kind of sit in our playful memories, like it's pretty easy to remember like what gifts those parts of us have, and like where we're missing out on being the star of our own show, the creator of our own stories, or the creators of stories around us. Like where are we longing for more like fulfilling companionship and exploration of the world, like that these things like really reveal both like the best of what we have to offer and also what we really are seeking out.
So is that if someone wants to incorporate more play or is seeing the value of doing that in their life, would you suggest then that they like think about the types of play that really lit them up as a kid and how they can but like how do you do that? Because like I'm not gonna play with dolls as an adult. I mean,
right.
So I'm probably not gonna.
So I think this is where play coaching happens, is that it helps build the bridge of like, what does that actually mean language wise? And what does that mean concept wise, And so it'd be like, if we're working with like somebody who's inclined towards storytelling, like you were talking about, Elizabeth, like it'd be like looking like, where are you identifying story in your life? Like, where are you making stories up in your own head? And how are those stories like harnessing you back? And where are you creating stories in ways that are liberating? And like, stupid play might be like, can you like write a haiku or about the person who checked you out at the grocery store? Like, can you like, so that you're reigniting like like the playful storyteller in your life, because we are biologically driven towards survival. So like our storytelling instincts will go towards anxiety. They'll go towards protective storytelling in it of its like just and the nature of our biology. Like we are always going to pick protection of our biology first. And so by reigniting our like storyteller, it's like, I'm not asking you to like not be anxious, because like that's the thing that like your biology is built to do, but it's also built to like do this other side. And so like, how can we bring the storytelling nature into a more liberated state so that it's not all living in the anxious storytelling?
So TJ, going back to Elizabeth's question about the garden that I interrupted,
Yeah.
like 20 minutes ago, it would be fair to say then that like gardening isn't play for everyone,
No, I
right?
hate gardening.
I
Like,
love gardening, so I liked that question. But I'll tell you, I walked outside last night and I noticed all these weeds in my garden, and I was just kind of like, oh, this thing again?
yeah.
Like,
And I shouldn't say like I hate gardening. It's just like not something that like is pulling me in. Like at different seasons of my life, I've enjoyed it more, and I like look forward to other seasons in my life where it is like there's more for that. But it's not the right play for me in this season. I could put on one song and ask all of it and say like, go have fun dancing to it. But it's like, and people are like, oh yeah, I love to dance. And then it turns out to be like a metal song, right? And like maybe I'm the only person who actually enjoys that. I'm like, what's wrong with you guys? I told you to have fun, right? You told me you love to dance, right? And play is like a personal path and pattern in our neurobiology. And so again, like people can garden for different reasons, and gardening may not be the thing that elicits play. And one day you may feel playful in your garden and the next day you don't. Like it's not necessarily a consistent state, like a behavior. It's because again, play isn't a behavior, it's an experience. And not every time we go after that behavior do we get the same experience.
no, yeah, that makes
And so
sense.
we're wanting to go after the experience, not the behavior. And so
Yeah.
play teaches us to go, like play education teaches us to go after the experience of embodiment, the experience of liberation, the experience of like whatever we're going for in our play, like in the focus of our play work. It teaches us to go after the experience and unlock like the hook of the behavior.
DJ, what about making, like, it makes me think, like, also learning how to make a situation a playful experience, even if the situation per se is not your cup of tea, right? Like I'm thinking like maybe I hate driving, a drive that I do every week, but then if I do it with loud music, again, imagining that I'm Madonna, then
Totally.
a whole different story, right? So how to incorporate that experience into what we do to wake up that part of ourselves that is there and is so important for our well-being and for how we feel.
I mean, honestly, one of the things that dove me into this being the path that my career, like I couldn't not take, was like the way that I watched play change for so many people over COVID, where I actually like, I saw so much playfulness emerge during COVID because people didn't have as much like stuff on their calendar. And so they had like this kind of weird abundance of like obnoxious free time and had to figure out like what to do with it. And so like, but you also saw on the flip side, like communities in isolation with their windows open and like, singing to each other. And like, I've just watched a video in like Israel of like people singing like through their streets, like, and like we think about play as this like joyful and abundant thing, but it's also this thing that is so meaningful as like this survival mechanism of life. So many of my most inspiring and like kind of motivating things have been watching people keep play in like these primal states of survival, where it's like the thing they won't let go of is the drum circle. The thing they won't let go of is like singing through the streets. Like the thing they won't let go of is like the ceremony that like the food ceremonies that bring people together during moments of starvation. Like this is what play is about. It's about community survival. And so it's like play is both this like frivolous, stupid thing, and is also the essential to our well-being in community and in our beings. And so it is this broad thing that we do and that we have to do in order to feel connected to ourselves and others.
I absolutely love how you have redefined play, like,
Agreed.
and explained it so beautifully in so many different ways. And I think we could ask you questions forever and ever. And definitely I'm already thinking, how can we get her back here for like Play 2.0?
Yeah, agreed.
But where's like well, first of all, I'm sure everyone out there is going to want more of you in their world. So please be sure to tell us how they can do that. But where's like one place that you would encourage anyone listening to start if they feel like they need more play in their life?
So my Instagram is the house to kind of all my resources, and I am the Playful Revolution on Instagram. And the easiest, lowest hanging fruit is I have what's called a play assessment. It takes you about 15 minutes to jump on my website, and it is and you spend about 15 minutes filling this out, and then I send you like 1 to 2 pages of a letter that's like, this is what kind of player I think you are and how you could ignite play in your life. That is the lowest hanging fruit to officially work with me. Lower than that is my freebie that's called Jumpstart Joy, and it is like a really fun way to like, with like a series of 7-8 emails, and it's like 1 week of exploring play in your everyday life. And so lowest hanging fruit is the Jumpstart Joy, and that is free to anybody who wants. My lowest hanging purchase option is this play assessment, where you get like, you get my eyes on your humanness and being like, here's how I think you show up in the world. And then there's options beyond that. And with my biggest option being this called Play Your Way. And it is teaching people how to embrace play as a lifestyle and as a lens on the world, and kind of flip all of this sort of work hard mentality into play hard mentality.
Well, who couldn't use more of that? Right?
Right.
I can agree.
We all can. We live in a deeply play deprived society. And so I do not want to gatekeep this. Like, come with all your questions and let me like create this revolution.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Amazing.
TJ, thank you so much for talking to us today about this really important info.
Yeah.
And that no one else is talking about. So you
Right.
you heard it here first, folks, on Wellness Rebranded.
We're winning the competition. That's a type of play.
Awesome. Thank you so much, TJ.
Thank you guys so much. It was such a joy to get to be with you guys.
We are always looking for products out there that support mental health and spread a good message. That's how we found Happy, Happii, and we fell in love with their mission and purpose. You can find well-made, beautiful jewelry, clothing, stationery with supportive messages. Here at Wellness Rebranded, we created an affiliate relationship with Happy to offer our listeners a 10% discount. Use the link in the show notes to check out all the amazing products, buy something for you or a friend or both, and let's keep opening conversations about the importance of prioritizing mental health. Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition, or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara DeLeon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.